You're already aware of all the bye weeks that are happening in Week 7 Fantasy Football and all the injuries to the running back position specifically, guys. And of course, we had the Thursday night game where Travis Etienne and Alvin Kamara both had really good games. So they're excluded from this list, obviously. So today we're getting into the rest of the top 30 running back rankings for Week 7 Fantasy Football, guys. And I'm up here on Saturday morning filming this at 6 o'clock in the morning. So please go down there, drop a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. It is greatly appreciated, guys. I need your help hitting 7,000 subscribers. So let's go ahead and just dive right into these matchups right now. So the first guy in his own tier this week, and I think it's very fitting with the injury to Christian McCaffrey, it's going to be Austin Ekeler versus the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City this week. So Austin Ekeler, I understand. He came back last week, and he had a pretty disappointing performance for his standards right there, right? I got a feeling that the Chargers are going to put up a really good fight against the Chiefs this week. I don't think they're going to win, but I think they're going to put up a good fight. And of course, Austin Ekeler is going to be a massive part of that. Because while Austin Ekeler was not dominant versus a top-tier defense, he did get plenty of targets, which is exactly what we can expect for the rest of the season without Mike Williams. That's what happened last season. With Mike Williams out, with Keenan out, Austin Ekeler is super important. So yes, Austin Ekeler is going to be up here in his own tier. The playmaking ability is there, and he's taking on a inferior defense compared to the Dallas Cowboys, but it's still not a bad defense, just to be clear. Number 2, I've got Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker versus the Arizona Cardinals. Because, guys, it's so crazy to me how so many people still don't seem to understand and respect how good Kenneth Walker has been in fantasy football. Just look at the numbers on the screen. I mean, they basically speak for themselves. He's averaging 17.2 fantasy points per game, and he's found the end zone 6 out of 5 games for the Seattle Seahawks. He's been tremendous. There's no question. And, it's not that he's just been getting lucky and getting the end zone. He's on a very good offense. They're efficient. Their offensive line is getting healthy again. He's been pretty efficient for the most part. Kenneth Walker, to me, is great. And the matchup this week, I've been on record saying it multiple times. I think the Seattle Seahawks are going to take the Arizona Cardinals to bed. I think they're just going to put them right to sleep. That's exactly what I think is going to happen. I'm just getting that reference right there. Let's just move on and ignore it. Let's go to number 3. We're going Christian McCaffrey versus the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota this week. So this is assuming he plays, obviously, right? If he plays, Christian McCaffrey's going to be just fine. He's not going to be top tier level Christian McCaffrey, I don't think. But it's also just from a result of I don't think they're going to handle him with 20 plus opportunities like they usually do. I don't think that's going to be on the table for Christian McCaffrey this week. I think this week he'll probably get 15 to 12 carries if he's healthy. I do think we're going to see more Elijah Mitchell this week. So we're obviously filming it on Saturday morning. I've seen the last thing I saw was Christian McCaffrey was hopeful to play. He was expecting himself to play. I don't know what's going to happen. By the time you're watching this, he may or may already been ruled out. So just keep in mind, keep watch for what happens with Christian McCaffrey. But if he plays, obviously the numbers on the screen speak for themselves. So he's going to be fantastic one way or the other, even if he doesn't get quite as much volume. Number 4, I've got Josh Jacobs taking on the Chicago Bears this week. Listen, I'm big on Josh Jacobs this week, actually. Josh Jacobs has been consistently improving over the past several weeks. Obviously, not efficient. You could see the numbers on the screen. He has not seen efficiency like we saw last year. So I do have issues with Josh Jacobs and how his performance has been this season so far. But at the same time, Josh Jacobs gets a great matchup here, and he's consistently handling the volume. So to me, I'm big on Josh Jacobs this week. In this type of matchup without Justin Fields, I think the Raiders they've got a good chance to pretty much smack down the Bears this week. Number 5, I've got DeAndre Swift in that beautiful matchup on Sunday night versus the Miami Dolphins in Philadelphia. I'm big on DeAndre Swift this week too. When you look back to last week, it was disappointing because when you looked at the stat sheet, you saw that Jalen Hurts threw the ball over 50 times versus the New York Jets. DeAndre Swift had 10 carries. Not good. And I think the Philadelphia coaching staff is smart enough to realize that, especially against this Miami Dolphins defense that is not nearly as good as the Jets. I think they're going to rebound and they're going to give the ball in DeAndre Swift's hands at least 17 to 20 times this game. And if he gets that many opportunities, good luck stopping the guy. DeAndre Swift has been excellent behind that Philadelphia Eagles offensive line this year. Number 6, Saquon Barkley this week, taking on the Washington Commanders. Probably feels a little bit high, actually, right? Like, Saquon Barkley is on a really bad team, like one of the worst, if not the worst, offenses in the entire league. And it doesn't matter, because here's the reality that separates Saquon Barkley from other running backs on bad teams. What separates him is the fact that when he came back just last week versus the Buffalo Bills of all teams, he handled 24 carries and he had almost 100 yards rushing. So obviously that's not super efficient right there, but the point remains that he is the entire offense of the New York Giants. That's what separates him. He's the entire offense for the Giants. That's what's happening. And the Washington Commanders are a much easier matchup to take on for a running back than the Buffalo Bills are. I've got Saquon here at number 6. Number 7, I'm big on Pacheco these days. Isaiah Pacheco taking on the Chargers. I am big on Pacheco. His volume just consistently increases over time. And here's the reality. The Chiefs have 2 reliable weapons, week to week, every week. Travis Kelce and Isaiah Pacheco. Isaiah Pacheco has come into that category. He's been great. Look at the numbers on the screen right here, and they don't even tell the full story. He's getting improved volume. He's getting around 15 to 18 touches per game these days as far as carries go alone. Isaiah Pacheco has been great in fantasy football, and he's going to continue to be, and I think that this matchup actually has a decent chance to score more total points than the Philadelphia versus Miami game. Honestly, I think this is going to be a shootout to watch, and I think Isaiah Pacheco is going to be really, really good. Raheem Mostert at number 8 in that Philadelphia matchup. It sounds, weird to have Raheem Mostert this low these days, actually. May or may not sound weird to you. It kind of feels weird to me. But I can't not address reality here. I've said this on several videos this week. When you look at the Miami Dolphins opponents that they have beaten this season, they have a combined record of 5-25. The only team that they played that was above 500, and the only winning team they played this year, the Buffalo Bills, they smoked them. And that's not their fault that they've played inferior opponents. That's their schedule. But Philadelphia is a really good team, and they're pissed coming off a loss to the Jets. The Eagles are still a really good team, and they're a really good defense. So I think there's a chance that we just could see lower output from Raheem Mostert, and I expect that because I think that the Eagles, when you look at them compared to the Bills, their front sevens are very similar, and they're very similarly coached. They're very well coached. So I think that the Dolphins might have a struggle bus this week, and I think that Raheem Mostert could be one of those guys. Although he's just so efficient and he's on still an explosive offense, he's not outside the top 10. Bijan Robinson at number 9, taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So Bijan Robinson, it's not been good the past several weeks. And honestly, I would have put him lower if every team was playing this week. Honestly, I really would have. But I just can't do that. In this type of week, with all the injuries and all the bye weeks, Bijan Robinson is still top 10. This guy is just simply too good of a player to have outside the top 10 in most circumstances. Bijan Robinson, like I said, I know it's been bad. He hasn't even scored a freaking rushing touchdown this year. The Atlanta Falcons offense is no good. They're just not good. So Bijan Robinson, I get it, but he's still efficient, averaging 5 yards per carry. I think Bijan Robinson, with the targets that he has and just the volume that he gets on a consistent basis, he's bound to break off a big play at some point, and that's exactly why I can't put him outside the top 10. Brian Robinson versus the Giants. I think Brian Robinson's a really good player. And to be honest here, this last guy, Brian Robinson, the top 10 are really the running backs that I'm comfortable with and confident in week 7. The guys below this, I'm not as confident in. I think Brian Robinson has a good game this week. Brian Robinson's volume has been lower over the past several weeks, and that's because the Washington Commanders have largely been not competitive in the games they've played. Last week was different. Atlanta, they had way more competitive. They obviously won the game, and Brian Robinson was more involved as a result. Brian Robinson, I've had issues with him for a long time. right? Like, he's not efficient. You can see he's not getting much volume. But I think versus the Giants this week, it's going to be different. They're playing a horrendously inferior team, and I think that Brian Robinson has a pretty decent week. Aaron Jones, number 11, taking on the Denver Broncos. That's the reason he's here. Well, I mean, if Aaron Jones plays, I have confidence in Aaron Jones because of the Denver Broncos. And of course, Aaron Jones has been good in spots this year. Like week 1, he was excellent. He showed that he's still capable of big plays. What he hasn't shown is he's capable of staying upright and being healthy. And that's the ultimate problem here. He comes into the game questionable. So if he plays, I'm good playing him because he's playing the Denver Broncos. If he doesn't play, obviously you'll make other arrangements. And honestly, I'm not a big A.J. Dillon guy, but I would play him against the Denver Broncos. And he'd probably be somewhere in the range of top 20 to 25 in these rankings. Number 12, Jahmyr Gibbs in one of the best matchups of the week versus the Baltimore Ravens. And I already know people are not going to be happy about this one. Jahmyr Gibbs, just the range of where people were drafting him before the season have gotten people so disgusted with Jahmyr Gibbs. Even the thought of him disgusts people. And that's exactly why I said he was a buy low candidate. You've got people who are just disgusted with what he did for them for the first several weeks, and they're just done with him. That's why he was a good trade target. And honestly, like I said with Bijan, if there was all teams playing and everybody was healthy, Jahmyr Gibbs would not be this high. But he is this high in a matchup that is not particularly great. But Jahmyr Gibbs is probably going to handle at least 15 attempts in this game. I think Jahmyr Gibbs has a decent game. And like I've said, you can see the numbers on the screen. He's efficient. So really all he needs is a big play to happen. And he's athletic enough to do something like that. I think he's going to pop off in one of these weeks. I don't know if it's going to be this week, but I do think he belongs inside the top 12, given the circumstances of the week. Number 13, Jerome Ford, taking on the Indianapolis Colts here this week. Honestly, I think Jerome Ford's a pretty decent start this week. He's kind of proved me wrong a little bit because I've been saying for weeks now that I don't think Jerome Ford's really that good of a player. And like you could see several weeks ago, he had like 2.9 yards per carry. He's much better and much more efficient than I thought he would be. He raised it to 4 yards per carry. So he's been very good. The Cleveland Browns offensive line is very good. And the Indianapolis Colts without Anthony Richardson, I think they're just going to become less competitive of a team over the next couple weeks. Indy's defense is good. I like Indy's defense. But with Jerome Ford, possibly without Kareem Hunt this week, I think that he's just going to be a good player this week. I think I've got a lot of confidence in Jerome Ford this week. Jonathan Taylor, number 14, same matchup. I've been telling everybody this for weeks. Jonathan Taylor is going to break out when you least expect it. And I don't know if it's going to be this week. When you're looking at it on paper and how Cleveland has been performing over the past several weeks and how Jonathan Taylor himself has been performing, odds are that he's probably not going to do it in this game. Cleveland's defense is stout, and Jonathan Taylor has not been efficient so far. But what was impressive and encouraging about last week was Jonathan Taylor, his big playability was back. He hit a couple good plays. Jonathan Taylor is going to get back, and he's going to get right. They made the investment on him, and Zach Moss is going to start losing touches like he did last week. But it's going to happen even more and more every week. I'm ready for Jonathan Taylor to have a good game. And again, he's largely here at 14 because of the circumstances of the week. But I think Jonathan Taylor has a good chance of having a 60 to 70 yard game, possibly a touchdown against the Browns. Rachaad White, Tampa Bay taking on the Atlanta Falcons. I think the matchup is really good. And you guys know, for those of you who have been following me for the season, you know I'm not a huge Rachaad White guy. I don't think he's that good. I mean, you can see the efficiency on the screen. 3.3 yards per carry. So if he doesn't get the volume, he's not going to be doing much. And he doesn't get much volume. I think it's a little different to get it to Atlanta this week. I think the matchup is really, really good. Atlanta has just not been a very good defense this year. They're just not. So I think Rachaad White, in the matchup circumstances, I think he could have a pretty good week this week. And I think that Tampa Bay is actually going to handle Atlanta pretty well this week. I think they'll end up beating them pretty bad, which puts Rachaad White in an opportunity where he probably gets more opportunities through the air and on the ground this week. Number 16, the man of the hour. Not really. James Cook of the Buffalo Bills taking on the New England Patriots. I get it. James Cook has not been good. I was talking on a live stream on Friday night to somebody who traded James Cook for Ramondre Stevenson, actually, and I said, I would not have done that trade. I would not personally. James Cook's on a good team. And listen, like, several weeks ago, when James Cook was getting like 15 to 18 carries a game, I was feeling really good about this one. And now, Buffalo's reverted back to what they always have been with Josh Allen under Sean McDermott, which is a team that is super reliant and dependent on Josh Allen. It's not great. Obviously, I want to see James Cook get more work. I think this week could happen. I think it could happen this week. James Cook's taken on a far inferior opponent this week against New England, and really, he's been very efficient. You could see the numbers on the screen. He's been super efficient, not only on the ground, but also with his receiving work as well. So all he needs is more opportunities, and I think they come this week when they absolutely embarrass the Patriots this week. Number 17, same matchup, Ramondre Stevenson. Also been a huge disappointment this year, no question about it. I was really big on Ramondre coming into the season. I didn't realize the Patriots were going to be this bad. I really didn't. And that's the ultimate problem here. Ramondre's on a bad team, which leads to bad efficiency numbers and really leads to less volume when they're trailing so much. I have a feeling we'll see that again this week. But the good thing about Ramondre is that he's their best offensive weapon, so they can't afford to not use him regardless of what the game script is. If they have to, they'll give him targets, and that's why he sees 4 targets a game. But again, you're not going to get much efficiency from Ramondre Stevenson. The best you could hope for is volume and goal line upside, which he definitely has, and I think that's the best case scenario for Ramondre this week. 18, Javonte Williams taking on the Green Bay Packers. Can't tell you how unexcited I am about this one, guys. Not going to sugarcoat it for you. Javonte Williams' situation has just been bad this year. I mean, obviously, Denver's a mess. Now their backfield's a mess. Javonte isn't even handling all of the work in this backfield right now. It's bad. But Green Bay's a good matchup. They really are. They're absolutely hamstrung with injuries as well on the defensive side of the ball. So Javonte Williams does have an opportunity this week. He is still handling the majority of the carries. So, yeah, you know. I can't even spend much more time on it. Let's move on. Number 19, D'Onta Foreman, taking on the Las Vegas Raiders this week. And listen, D'Onta Foreman is back inside the top 30 again this week. And obviously, if you have not seen by now, Roschon Johnson is out versus the Las Vegas Raiders. That's the main reason. D'Onta Foreman, honestly, in his first game, he was not bad. He really, really was not bad. Like, he had 60-plus yards in that game on, like, 15 carries, I think. And so, he's actually, like, we know this about D'Onta Foreman. Those of you who've been playing fantasy football for a while, we know that D'Onta Foreman steps in this type of role, and he does way better than people think. This is a good matchup against the Raiders this week. I would not be surprised if D'Onta Foreman has an 80-yard game, a 90-yard game. Seriously, I really wouldn't. He's done this several times over his career. Against bad opponents where nobody thinks much of him, D'Onta Foreman comes in and has a good game. I think it's very possible this week. Number 20, if Kareem Hunt plays, I've got him here against the Indianapolis Colts. Kareem Hunt, his volume is increasing over the past several weeks. That's a positive sign. But let's not jump too high on Kareem Hunt yet, because Kareem Hunt still is very inefficient. 3.3 yards per carry. That's the problem here with Kareem Hunt, is he's just really not an efficient player at this point in his career. What saved his week last week was the touchdown that he got. So 12 carries, 7 carries, I don't care. It doesn't matter. He needs to get in the end zone. So that's why he's not going to be very high in these rankings. But if he does play, I do see a world where Kareem Hunt gets another 10 carries or so and possibly gets into the end zone again versus the Indianapolis Colts. Number 21, Jeff Wilson Jr. Are y'all excited to see him back or what? I mean, let's not sugarcoat this. Like, it's not like Jeff Wilson is some astounding player, but Jeff Wilson has had success in the past with Mike McDaniel, I might add, in both San Francisco and in Miami. And obviously Miami's offense is explosion, just waiting to happen. Jeff Wilson, it's really hard to predict this week what's going to happen with his workload and how he's going to perform if he does play versus the Eagles in his first game back. It's hard to predict, but just because of the offensive upside that he's on, that's why he's up here at number 21. It is simple. The Miami Dolphins offense is excellent, and they've typically used 2 running backs this season, and obviously Devon Achane is out. So Raheem Mostert, and then you've got Jeff Wilson and possibly Salvon Ahmed. I like my chances this week. They said he could have went last week, so them bringing Jeff Wilson back this week just shows me that he's probably fully ready to go. So based on what they've done this year and based on their offensive performance this year, I've got Jeff Wilson here at number 21. Number 22, Elijah Mitchell versus the Minnesota Vikings. Earlier this week in my must start and sit running backs video that I did, I said that I want a San Francisco running back one way or the other. And that's the reality here. And honestly, Elijah Mitchell is going to stick here regardless of if Christian McCaffrey plays or not. Because like I said, with McCaffrey, I do believe that his workload will be limited this week. And that's really what gives me confidence to play a guy like Elijah Mitchell. So Elijah Mitchell, I get it. He's been dealing with injuries himself this week. Or not this week, this season. But he is coming into the week looking healthy. So Elijah Mitchell, regardless of if Christian McCaffrey plays or not, I think does belong inside of the top 22 versus a pitiful defense. And that really, like I've said all week, this team is low-key tanking. That's the reality with my Minnesota Vikings here. I've got Elijah Mitchell here at 22. Number 23, Zach Moss versus the Cleveland Browns. Listen, I find it really hard to determine what Zach Moss's output's going to be week to week. He's been one of the toughest players for me to evaluate in fantasy football. On paper, and what we've seen over the years from not Elijah Mitchell, Zach Moss over the years, it's been bad. Like, he hasn't shown that he's a very good player. Indy has brought something out of him, though. I mean, he's averaging basically 5 yards per carry. And the only reason he's not higher is because, like we discussed with Jonathan Taylor, they made the investment on Jonathan Taylor. So that shows you that his volume's going to go down. And not only does that contract show you that, but last week showed you that when his volume went down. And the coaching staff has showed you that, saying that Jonathan Taylor is going to get more touches and Zach Moss's workload will shrink. So it's hard to predict here, but it's gotten to the point where I can't put Zach Moss outside of my top 30 because of how good he's been in fantasy football this season. Not a bad starting option. Alexander Mattison at 24, taking on the San Francisco 49ers. That's the main reason he's down this low. And like, if he was playing the Chicago Bears again, or if he was playing the Giants, like, he would definitely be higher. But I'm not going to say that he'd be inside the top 15. Alexander Mattison, if he was playing the Giants, he'd be like top 18. That's the problem with Alexander Mattison. You could see it on the screen. Not only is he not getting volume, but he's not efficient. It's a very similar situation to Rachaad White. Minnesota throws the crap out of the ball. So Alexander Mattison just is really not in a good situation here. That's just the reality. Tyler Algier at 25, taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Listen, these last couple rankings here are the reason why I say make sure you know how important it is that week 7 buys are like at the front of your perception here, because Tyler Algier is here at 25 because of the bye weeks and the injuries. Tyler Algier has not been great. Like, past several weeks, he's really went down in efficiency. And they're playing a really tough defense here. But the volume has increased. That's the thing. He had 17 carries a couple weeks ago, and I think he had 13 or 14 carries last week. So his volume is increasing. And that's what we need to remember here. And that's exactly why he's at 25. 26. I can't tell you how much higher I wanted to put Zach Evans in the Los Angeles Rams. Zach Evans, for those of you who were with me during the offseason, I went into Zach Evans really deeply, not only in my 2023 Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide that I released after the draft, but also during and after the draft. I went over Zach Evans a lot. And Zach Evans is a 6th-round rookie out of Ole Miss, originally played for TCU. Zach Evans was very efficient in college. Never handled much of a workload, but he was very efficient. And he's got big playability attached to him because he's fast and he's athletic. Zach Evans, if he gets the starting nod, which I expect him to, I think he has a very good shot to have a good game against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh historically traveling to the West Coast to play West Coast teams, their record is not very good. That is not speculation. That's a fact. So I think that the Zach Evans train, depending on what his volume is this week, could look very, very good. Obviously, it's unsure. We're not sure what the volume is going to look like, but if he does handle the volume, I'm definitely in on it. And even if we don't know if he handles the volume, I'm safe and I feel very comfortable telling my audience that Zach Wilson is inside the top 26 and a legit flex option this week. Number 27, Gus Edwards, Baltimore Ravens. I say it every week. It's the same thing every week. Him and Justice Hill, they share touchdowns week to week, and that's just the reality here. They're taking on a tough Detroit defense. Gus Edwards is here because of 12 carries a game, which is basically very, very consistent, and that's the reason he's here on a team that does have a good offense, but there's lots of bye weeks this week again. 28, Jaylen Warren and Najee 29. Jaylen Warren's ahead of Najee these days. 100%. Jaylen Warren is a better fantasy option. Look, they're both starting to handle basically the same amount of volume per game. And that's the important piece. Because as you can see on the screen with Jaylen Warren, he's not that efficient either. Like, that's the thing, is like he doesn't come out and have really efficient games and Najee just sucks. They're both not good behind this offensive line. That's the problem. It's the offensive line. But I will say that the Los Angeles Rams defense has not been good this year. So there is a chance that one of them has a decent game or maybe a touchdown. I'm not going to be confidently telling my audience to start Pittsburgh Steelers running backs because as you can see with Najee as well, Najee has not been good. And his volume is going down, like I said. He's starting to share touches basically with Jaylen Warren. And Najee doesn't get targets either. That's what Jaylen Warren gets. So, yeah, it's just an ugly situation here. I would start Jaylen over Najee, but they're really not that different. Let's be honest here. Jaleel McLaughlin rounds out the top 30, taking on the Green Bay Packers. Like I said, Denver's backfield's a mess. And I do think that Jaleel McLaughlin has showed plenty of efficiency. Look, 6.6 yards per carry is real. And obviously, he's not getting, like, it's not like he's been even on the field for very long to determine how efficient he really is. But in a matchup versus Green Bay, after a week where Jaleel McLaughlin was the most efficient running back again for the Denver Broncos, I think Denver's got a pretty good shot at having Jaleel McLaughlin get another 10 carries and 50 yards, maybe a touchdown if he's lucky. And as we do at the end of every ranking video, I give you my underdog flex running back option of the week, not inside the top 30. And boy, this week was hard. But the answer was clear at the end of the day. Zach Charbonnet of the Seattle Seahawks taking on the Arizona Cardinals is my answer. Zach Charbonnet, I've been saying for weeks now, we got to go pick him up off the waiver wire. This guy is widely available on the waiver wire, and when he has played, he has looked good. Now, the reason he's on here at week 7 is because the Arizona Cardinals, I have said all week, I think they're going to get obliterated this week by the Seattle Seahawks. They're mad coming off a loss to Cincinnati. And Arizona is about to head into a tailspin because they're 1-5 and they're just not that talented. So the reality here is that I think that Zach Charbonnet could see a 12 to maybe 10 to 12 carry game and have plenty of efficiency because he has been efficient this year. And that's why he's here as my underdog flex running back of the week. So let me know what you think of the rankings in the comments below and what questions you need answered for week 7 fantasy football. And if you have not seen my top 12 defense rankings video yet, click on this video here to see the top 12 defenses in week 7 fantasy football.